Picture the dramatic arrival in September, 490 BCE, when a massive Persian fleet carrying thousands of soldiers slowly appeared on the misty horizon. The greatest empire on earth had come to crush a small, defiant city-state, leaving ancient Athens standing completely alone against this terrifying and looming threat. This is the legendary story of Marathon, a monumental battle that changed history when an outnumbered citizen army bravely stood to face professional and ruthless warriors. With the future of democracy itself hanging in the balance, everything was at stake for Greece, and failure meant complete and utter annihilation of their culture. To fully understand this clash, we must travel back in time to examine how the mighty Persian Empire rose to absolute power across the ancient world. Ruled by King Darius I, the empire stretched from India to Egypt, becoming the largest empire ever seen, yet they still hungered for more land. When Greek cities in Asia Minor rebelled against Persian rule, Athens made the bold choice of sending warships to support their desperate and chaotic rebellion. Although the rebellion was quickly crushed, King Darius never forgot this defiance, vowing personal revenge against Athens with a promise he fully intended to keep. In the summer of 490 BCE, a massive Persian armada of 600 grand warships sailed formidably across the deep blue Aegean Sea. Carrying 25,000 soldiers, cavalry, and deadly archers, their simple mission was to destroy Athens and make a brutal example of anyone defying the king. The Persian forces landed at Marathon, a crescent-shaped sandy bay located roughly 26 miles northeast of the vulnerable and highly panicked city of Athens. This strategic location was perfect, offering flat ground for their cavalry, a safe harbor for ships, and an open path to march directly on Athens. News of the massive invasion reached Athens quickly. An overwhelming panic immediately set in among the frightened citizens as they gathered in the city streets. The assembly convened urgently to debate their options, but they were bitterly divided, with many arguing for surrender to avoid absolute destruction by Persia. Many citizens preferred to stay behind their stone walls, waiting for help from Sparta, their powerful and highly respected military ally to the southern region. But the Athenian general Miltiades argued passionately for an immediate attack, warning that waiting would only weaken their defense and embolden the approaching enemy. Athens urgently dispatched their professional runner Phidippides to Sparta, desperately begging for immediate military assistance against the massive Persian force landing on their coast. He covered 140 miles in just 2 days, but the Spartans delivered devastating news that a religious festival prevented them from marching yet. The sacred moon had to be full before the Spartan army could mobilize, meaning it would take 6 long days for any help to arrive. Athens did not have 6 days, as the Persians could attack at any moment, or internal sympathizers might treasonously open the city gates to them. So Athens made a fateful decision to march out courageous and meet the massive Persian army directly upon the dusty plains of Marathon. 10,000 citizens were called to arms, not professional soldiers, but humble farmers, craftsmen, and merchants who grabbed their heavy bronze shields and spears. Only tiny Plataea answered the desperate Athenian call for help, sending 1,000 brave soldiers out of deep gratitude for past military and political support. Together, this small and desperate force marched steadily north to face an invading enemy more than twice their size, knowing the odds were terrible. The Athenian army quickly took position in the rocky foothills overlooking Marathon, strategically blocking the main dirt road that led directly to their city. For several tense days, neither side moved, as the Greeks held the high ground while the Persians completely controlled the wide plain below them. It was a silent stalemate, but tension mounted with every passing hour as Athenian commanders realized that time favored the vast and patient Persian army. The Persian cavalry could easily outflank their rocky position, or their massive fleet could sail around to attack the undefended gates of Athens directly. Then came the moment that changed everything, as Greek scouts reported that the feared Persian cavalry was suddenly being loaded back onto the enemy ships. Miltiades saw his golden opportunity to attack, knowing that without their deadly cavalry, the overall Persian advantage was greatly reduced on the battlefield. Miltiades devised a highly risky tactical strategy by deliberately weakening his center ranks while massively reinforcing both of his military flanks with additional troops. This unorthodox formation was either brilliant or completely suicidal, as it departed drastically from the traditional strength of classical Greek phalanx battle tactics. At misty dawn, the brave Athenian citizen soldiers formed their lines, staring across the dusty plain at thousands of highly disciplined, professional Persian warriors. With sweating hands gripping heavy shields under the morning sun, the nervous soldiers waited in silence until the final, dramatic order to advance came. Instead of marching, the Greeks suddenly began to charge, running rapidly across nearly a mile of open ground to minimize exposure to Persian arrows. The shocked Persians had never witnessed such a terrifying sight as screaming Greek warriors sprinting directly toward them in full, heavy bronze armor. The two armies collided with tremendous force on the battlefield, where bronze crashed violently against bronze amidst a deafening roar of war cries. Exactly as Miltiades had planned, the Persian forces pushed deep into the center, causing the thin Athenian line to buckle and slowly fall back. However, on both flanks, the heavily reinforced Athenian wings smashed violently through the enemy lines with incredible power and determined, unified strength. The Persian flanks rapidly crumbled under the disciplined fury of the heavily armed hoplites, who pressed forward with their long spears and bronze shields. Executing a masterstroke, the Greek wings wheeled inward, turning sharply to attack the exposed Persian center from both sides with perfect tactical precision. The clever trap was sprung, and the Persians suddenly found themselves surrounded on three sides, heavily compressed and unable to swing their weapons. As panic spread rapidly through the Persian ranks, soldiers at the back could not hear orders over the deafening chaos of the battlefield. The once organized imperial army completely dissolved into chaos, with terrified men turning and sprinting toward their ships to escape the brutal, closing trap. The victorious Greeks pursued the fleeing enemy all the way to the sandy beach, continuing the brutal, chaotic fight directly among the docked warships. Desperate hand-to-hand combat erupted in the wet surf as Athenians fiercely grabbed the sterns of ships, trying to prevent them from sailing away. When the terrible battle was over, the wide shoreline of Marathon lay covered with thousands of fallen Persian soldiers under the afternoon sun. The Athenians lost only 192 brave men, whose names were recorded forever on a stone monument erected directly on the historic battlefield. However, the battle was not quite finished, as the surviving Persian warships immediately sailed around the cape to strike the undefended city of Athens. If the enemy reached the city first, the victory at Marathon would mean nothing, especially if waiting sympathizers opened the gates from within. The exhausted Athenian army immediately turned around and marched 26 grueling miles back to Athens, carrying their heavy armor, weapons, and equipment. They reached the city walls just as the Persian fleet arrived, forcing the disappointed invaders to realize their grand conquest had failed completely. Defeated and discouraged, the imperial fleet turned and sailed back to Asia, marking the dramatic end of the first Persian invasion of Greece. Marathon proved to the world that courage, strategy, and tactical brilliance could overcome overwhelming enemy numbers and professional, elite military might. According to ancient legend, the exhausted runner Phidippides ran from Marathon to Athens to announce their victory before tragically collapsing and dying. Although historians debate this event, the legendary run captured global imaginations, inspiring the very first modern marathon race in 1896. The historic victory at Marathon had profound and lasting consequences, allowing the young Athenian democracy to survive, flourish, and shape the future world. This monumental triumph gave Greeks the vital confidence they needed 10 years later, while establishing the foundational concept of free citizen soldiers. Marathon ultimately reminds us that raw numbers do not decide historical outcomes, for strategy, courage, and true unity can overcome overwhelming odds. The fallen Athenian soldiers bought something truly precious: the survival of democracy and freedom, an idea worth fighting for both then and now.